throw a donut OBJ file in there. So if you haven't already, I encourage you all to open up Blender, get ready to rock and roll. I'm going to give you a donut. I'll show you how to get that donut in your file, and then we'll get rocking and rolling from there. You don't need the donut for this tutorial. It's just something nice to kind of play with in texture. But we'll be going over the basic, ideas and materials and shaders in Blender. We'll go into image textures as well, and then we'll also go into a little bit of a, maybe just toe length in the pool for node-based system in Blender. Blender has so much more to offer that anyone can showcase in 1 hour. So like I said, we'll do the best we can, and we'll see where we get there. But I do have resources available. Also, as we are being recorded here, there is also text slides that I think have been shared. Zuko, while I'm kind of preparing the donut for them, or anyone from the cadre management there, could you let them know where those tutorials could be found? I think I saw you posted them.
Yes, they will be posted in resources in the cadre and ACM SIGGRAPH resources channels. I posted the first tab, which was just making the donut, and I'll post a more in-depth texturing one that also Tyler has made in there.
Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, Teaching Art 107, where it's kind of an experimental class. I think 107's kind of historically been that, maybe more like 175. But yes, we did go through 3D modeling in that class. I'm going to give you guys 2 files, either a blend file if you want to work with that, or an OBJ, and I'll throw that in the chat. It just gives me a minute here to Google Drive and link it up. But yeah, those text tutorials are available on Discord. Again, I have one that's made for a donut, simple donut. There's plenty of donut tutorials out on the web. But I think for a straightforward, but especially for like introductory level, I think that's going to be kind of nice, just very simple. So that's going to be available to you all. And then also material slide deck, kind of like what I'm going off today. I'm not going to cover everything in that slide deck. And there might be some things that are different than what we'll do tonight. But nonetheless, though, that is available for you all. So as everyone's joining and probably like, whoa, where's the donut? Where's all this stuff? It should be popping in Zoom here momentarily. There's the donut. Donut has landed. And then let me go and get the blend file, which is the same thing. I'll show you how to import the donut OBJ, and you should be groovy. But if you're a little bit skeptical and a little bit nervous, like I said, Blender for new folks can be a little bit daunting, as all new software is. So if anything, I'm going to give you the blend file, which if you have Blender 2.9 or higher, should function as well. So there they are there, the donut.obj and cadre_texture. All that's going to be in it is the donut. There might be actually some other things in there, but don't sweat about it if there are. Nothing graphic. Okay.
And I put the slides in here too.
Awesome. Thank you, Zuko. Awesome. So yeah, there are the slides right there. Feel free, if you got like a double monitor system that you kind of have up there, bookmark it, save it. As I mentioned, we may go into all of it. We may miss out a little bit, but it's just a good reference to have, right? How can you beat it? And it's made by me, so feel free to do what you would please with it. So that being said, I'm going to open up a new blend file here. So give me 1 second. I'll share my screen. All right. Okay. So now I'm all set. I'm going to go into share screen mode. Boop, boop. Okay. And I'll also have the chat open up as well. So what I'm going to ask for everyone is, if you do have a question, something doesn't make sense, something's not working on your end, feel free to kind of jump in and say, hey, Tyler, what's going on? I'll keep my eye on the chat as best as I can. I ain't no Twitch streamer. I can't really dual wield as best as, the best can do. So feel free. This is totally informal. We're just all kind of hanging out here and trying to get some Blender action going on. So that being said, I'm going to do my setup scene here by importing that donut that I just shared. So I'm going to start with a new Blender scene. Again, I just hit File, New, and this is what you kind of see here. I'm sure you all are kind of familiar with this interface by now. I'm going to delete these objects here. And in case, you missed out last night's workshop, there's a cool hotkey called, well, it's not called anything. It's just select all, and it's hitting the A button. An A button, when you're just looking in your viewport and clicking on it once, just hit A. It selects everything in the scene. You can see that also with the hierarchy here up on the top right. I just hit X, deleting it all. We don't need any of that noise. If we do, we'll add it later, but we should be A-okay. We got a clean slate. I'm going to go File, Import, wavefront.obj. Y'all know it was called Wavefront? It's history there. Forgot what it was from. Silicon Graphics, something like that.
Wavefront Technologies.
What was it again, Steve? You know it.
Wavefront Technologies.
Wavefront, is that okay? Yeah, Wavefront Technologies. It's in the name. All right, then. So here's my donut.obj here. I'm just going to double click that, and boom, we have our donut in the scene. Again, you don't really need this donut to rock and roll today's tutorial. You can use whatever objects you want. It could be the basic, cube. It can be a sphere. It can be anything like that. We're going to go, it's like I said, we're going to go a little bit wild here with the textures and shaders here. So really any object you have is going to be A-okay. And we're maybe even going to change this donut down the road. So far here, anyone have any issues so far? It's pretty straightforward. You all should have the donut from yesterday, but if you haven't, I hope you have it now. But has anyone run into some issues? I think everyone's rocking and rolling good.
I have a question.
Yes, Cole.
You posted the cadre_texture.blend file. What is that?
It's the same exact thing. I just did the way of importing the donut. If, for example, let's go with the other way. Cole has asked cadre_texture. It's basically the same exact thing. It's just in case you're afraid to add the donut in there by importing or something like that. And I guess that didn't want to open up for me now. It did it, huh?
I'm not afraid.
I guess my computer was afraid.
All right, I imported the object.
There you go. There. Yeah. So you're all set there. It's just, again, because we're all beginners here. I know Blender was very daunting. So just even importing an object, if that sounds kind of spooky, I gave you the file already packaged, ready to go.
Okay.
Okay. So here we go. We have our donut. There's not too much fancy to it. It's a donut with glaze, right? It's what you all seen from yesterday. So let's just add some kind of simple material to our donut, add some color to it. There's plenty of ways you can do realism. We're just going to kind of focus with kind of like cartoony, think like Pixar kind of look, because kind of that's what our donut looks like. Donuts don't really look this nice and smooth. There's always some bumpiness. So let's begin. So some of the stuff I'm going to kind of just, be a reminder. Again, some of you, this may be the first time, but there's two pieces to the donut right here. And if you're using my file, I actually have the glaze parented to this donut cream. So that means is basically if I move the donut, the cream's coming with it. Don't know if that was covered last workshop, but if you don't have it, don't sweat about it. That's just a little tip and why you don't see it necessarily under the hierarchy, as you may have seen. Okay. And then, let me actually throw that in one more time because I do this easy to chat, just in case there's anyone that's joined, because I know chat is not rectoactive. Maybe Cadre folks help me out there for future people, and you guys can just grab that donut and share it in there. Okay, should be popping up there soon. Okay, so let's just start selecting one piece of our donut and let's give it some color. So let's start with the donut itself rather than the icing. So again, I have two objects here, icing and the donut. And you can see pretty easily what I'm selecting with that little orange highlight around it, right? So we want to make sure that we have the main donut selected, not the icing, the main donut. And don't worry, if you accidentally have the wrong thing selected, you're going to find out shortly what's going on. So the next thing we're going to do, and actually I'm going to turn on my highlight cursor thing because I always think that helps out a bit, is we are going to add a material. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to this right panel right here. This is called like the properties panel, and I'm sure it has many names, but just think of it as kind of like a properties panel with a bunch of different aspects of the project. We want to look at materials. I know it's a drag. I wish I could zoom in, but the material is this little like red ball that kind of looks patchy or something like that. That's on the bottom right there. Normally by default, you maybe have like the scene properties on. Make sure you hit that little properties panel to open this up. You may not see this if you don't have anything selected, so make sure you have the donut selected firsthand. Okay, pretty easy there, right? You're all probably right with me. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add a new material. By default, there may be a material on top of your object already, maybe not if you're using my file. We are just going to hit new right here to add a new material. So let's hit that together, new. And again, I know some of you may not have double screens. You might be rocking and rolling with a single screen like on a laptop or desktop. So I'm going to try to go a little bit slow here, and if not, do things twice over just so you all don't miss a beat. I know it's really challenging to learn on Zoom with just one single monitor. So I'm going to do the best I can. And again, we're all here to help. Feel free to ask in the chat. I'm pretty sure someone will catch me up, or catch you up, I should say. So we're going to change the name of this material. By default, they kind of give you like a material.001. If you're a robot, that's pretty groovy. But if all reality, we're going to change this to donuts. So we're just going to change the name by just clicking there and highlighting. I just double click there. It didn't actually need the highlight. And I'm just going to write donut and hit enter. So now we've made a new material called donut. Okay. And I know there may be like other ways, some of you in the past that have played with Blender, how you can do with materials. We're not going to open up any crazy side windows just yet. We're just going to stick with this little properties panel right here. I think it's good to use this for now. Later, in the workshop today, we'll kind of expand the usage and possibilities, you know, with viewing shaders in Blender. So we're going to change the base color. Think about right now. Close your eyes and think about your favorite color. You got it? That's the color you're going to pick for your, well, I guess not for your donut, for your icing, huh? So maybe first, let's think about a donut. Visualize the donut color. What is that? It's kind of like a beige color, right? So let's hit this base color, you know, property right here. So if we click on this, it's going to open something I think we're all familiar with, a color wheel. You know, Photoshop, all that other stuff usually has a color wheel. It's set to hue and saturation and value, I believe. You can do whatever one you want. I leave it on HSV. That's kind of like what I've kind of stuck with for now. And let's change this to like a beige kind of color. So I'm going to kind of grab, you know, down here and drag into kind of like what, yellow orange, you know, kind of way. And while I'm doing this, you know, you're not noticing the donuts changing, right? It's still gray. So to kind of resolve that, we need to look either in the renderer, which if we did, it's going to be pretty dark. There's no lights. So let's look in material preview mode. There's two ways to access material preview mode. One is up on the top right of your viewport. You have these four little balls right here. Maybe you guys ran over that Wednesday. I'm not too sure. I wasn't there, unfortunately. But in this little top right section, you'll see these different viewport shading options. The one that we want to find is material preview mode. You can see it right there on the bottom. I'm pointing to my screen, how funny. But it says display as wire edges, display as solid, and display as material preview mode. So click on material mode, and lo and behold, you should have some color, at least to your donut. If you have it on your icing, that's a-okay. We'll fix that here momentarily, you know, but you may want to make sure you're selecting your right object and change that material by just clicking and adding the donut right there. I'm going to add it to my icing. Just let's say I made the mistake myself, and we'll fix that here momentarily. Make sure you also name your donut objects, right? It's good to have object naming. Donut cream, donut. Donut cream, what a weird name. I should have called it icing, huh? But anyways, but nonetheless though, don't matter. We'll be able to fix that here. But pick a color, use the base color slider, and just find the perfect shade of a donut to you. I think we've all had different donuts. We all see things a little bit differently. Your donut may look completely different than mine. You could be as abstract as you want to. Again, this is not realism. We can do whatever we want. It's Blender. So now we've just added a little bit of color to your donut. Let's do the same thing, but let's do it to our icing. Okay. So again, same thing as before. Select your icing. Again, I have mine called donut cream, so I know that I have that selected. In case you haven't renamed objects in Blender before, or this is your first time at the workshop, you want to double click right here and write donut. But if you're using my object or my file, you should be fine. Okay, so with the donut icing selected, the donut cream, whatever you want to call it, let's do the same thing. So what we're going to do is, for example, I accidentally have a material on it. How can I get rid of this, Tyler? So how we get rid of this is we just go right here and we hit this little X right here. It's unlink data block. And basically this just unlinks the material. It just, you know, not deletes it entirely. Deleting materials in Blender is actually very weird. But we just hit this little X and it nicks off our material. So that's awesome. We got rid of that mistake. We have a clean slate, which I know you're all super learners here. You're all with me and you didn't even do that. So you're groovy. So now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to hit new. And this time is when I want you to think of your favorite color and use that as your icing. My favorite color is purple. So again, all we did was hit the X, added a new material because again, there was no material to start with, and we changed the color only in the base color. That's all we've done so far. I'm going to change my material name from material, you know, .001 to icing. Okay. So far, everyone's rocking and rolling. It's more so if you're quiet, that means you're going good. But if you have any questions or something like that, let me know. So far, not too crazy. I think it's pretty simple here. Use like the middle mouse button, to, you know, kind of orbit around your guy. Take a good look at that donut. Now that is a nice donut. Mine, at least with the purple pink kind of look, kind of looks like something from The Simpsons or something, what Homer would eat, right? Okay. There's a couple of more things before we even leave out of this and go into more advanced tutorials. So what this also has, this is called a Principled BSDF shader. Honestly, I don't know what the acronym BSDF stands for. I always think BDSM. That's just how the tongue goes, right? But this is kind of like the main shader that Blender uses. And if you're ever exporting for game assets, virtual worlds, anything like that, GLB is kind of the format you want to use. In principle, BSDF and the shader and GLB kind of go hand in hand. They're best friends, they're best buds. So I recommend you always use the principal BSDF shader. If you look at other tutorials, maybe you're interested in Blender after these workshops, stick away from like, crazy nodes and shaders. It's good to experiment with them and they will work in Blender totally fine. But once you start exporting them out into using them in other applications, you may run into some issues. Okay, so we're going to look at a couple of other settings here with this principal BSDF shader, and I'm on my icing material for now. So when I'm scrolling a little bit down here, there's a couple of things that catch my eye, and they're pretty important with how the aspects of your material looks like. And also, this is probably a good point to show this really great feature here in Blender. So agreed, this material preview is going to be really cool. I'm going to move this roughness shader to the left and right, and you can see how it gets really shiny. It gets really dull. It actually even shows a forest in the background, and you might be like, where is that forest coming from? What this forest is coming from is the kind of, it's kind of like a default like HDRI, like a skybox. Think like a big like circle sphere, right? If you kind of want to visualize that and kind of get out of this kind of gray background, especially since we're dealing with materials and textures tonight, I would recommend you all to go up on your very top of your Blender file. Oh, and also hit Command S or Control S, save your file, gang. Up on the very top here, there's this shading tab. Let's click on the shading tab right here. So this shading tab actually is pretty cool, and it brings us to a whole new viewport on Blender. It opens up a whole bunch of new windows that maybe get a little bit daunting. You got a file directory here. You have like this weird grid system on the bottom left and stuff like that. Don't sweat about that. Just focus again on our properties tab we have it here on the right. And again, now we have our shader editor open down here. So this is kind of like the node system that I'm going to go over here tonight. And we're going to do like some fun custom nodes that, again, won't work in the GLB, but we will go over some simple image textures that can help you make realistic environments very easily. We'll actually even maybe make like a table or something like that here real quick. So the first kind of setting that we kind of went here with our donut, and again, you can kind of see how I'm kind of manipulating to kind of frame my donut up here. But again, the roughness slider is kind of the main one to give you like shininess. So I'm going to move the roughness shader, maybe like what, 0.35, maybe 0.3. I just want my glaze to be really shiny because, most of the time glaze and icing is pretty shiny, unless it's like a flat glaze. But we're going to do that just to give it a little bit of shininess on our donut shader. Another kind of fun, aspect of this principal BSDF shader is the metallic one. Not really needed for a donut, but it makes things metal. I don't know. Maybe you're making donuts for robots, so that might be really fun to play with. We're going to leave that at 0 for now, though, however, and we'll kind of go into that when we start playing with a couple more shaders here. Our donut one, that's actually really good. I don't think we need to mess with it too much. If you want to make your donut really matte and have no shine, just slide that roughness all the way to 1 because, donuts don't really have a shine to them, right? Unless you get a glazed donut, then there you go. Maybe make yours shiny. So that's just kind of like, a simple way to kind of use the principal BSDF shader and the base colors to start coloring your objects, Another kind of fun way is you can actually have multiple objects on one or multiple materials on one object. And I think the best way to show this off, I mean, we could do it with the donut, but I think a cube is going to show this off a little bit better here. So let's go back to our layout mode. And that's going to bring us back to the, the viewport that we're kind of used to. And what we're going to be doing here is we're going to make a couple new materials, but first let's make a new object. So my donut, let's hide this sucker. You can either, select it all and hit G to grab it, and you can move it out of frame if you want to, or you can just hit the little hide in viewport up here in the hierarchy to hide your donut. As you can see, it hid my donut. Look how funny that looks, huh? But it did not hide the icing. I had to open up my donut. Again, if you grab the donut from me, you're going to have to do the same thing. You're going to have to open up your donut, group. And you're going to have to hide the icing there, okay? So like I said, push the donut off to the side, A-okay, or just hide the donut entirely. Okay, let's add a cube. I did that pretty quickly, but Shift A is how you add new objects, mesh, and we're going to go to cube. If you're not into hotkeys, you can, of course, go up to the very top and you can hit object. I think it's object. No, it's add, and you can go mesh there. But hotkeys, I highly recommend. So now that we have our cube, yeah, welcome back, cube, right? We got rid of him and he shows his face again. We can never get rid of the old lovely cube. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add 3 new materials to this cube. And we're just going to kind of, like I said, play with the principal BSDF sliders and just kind of see what different materials we can have. And we're going to have all 3 materials on one single object. Sounds a little bit crazy, but it's actually pretty simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my, my lovely cube. Make sure, again, that orange highlight is what really helps you distinguish that, hey, I'm having this cube selected. And we're going to go again to the materials tab if you're not already on it. And we're just going to hit new. I'm not too creative with material names right now. So I'm just going to do MAT_01. Okay. That's all I'm going to add now. And I'm going to just change the color of this. So do that all on your ends. Make a new material, change the color, make it however you want. See you, Cole. All right, now we can really have some fun. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so we've added, again, just a random basic material. Could be whatever color you want. We're going to add a new material to this set. And how we do that is a little bit tricky. We hit this little plus right here. You see that add material slot? As by default, Blender only really likes 1 material per object, but you can add more. And all you have to do is hit this little plus right here to add a new material slot. It's a blank slate. It's ready to be added a new material. And I want you to do the same thing. Add a new material, call it mat_02, and change the color. _mat_. I haven't seen any mats that often. Mats feel like a rare breed nowadays. I'm going to change this color to a green. So you can see I added new material to this object, and it's green, but it's nowhere on my object, and that's A-okay. We have to assign the materials onto the faces of the object. Kind of weird, but that's how it's going to work. I've actually met one Matthew this semester. He's a really bright kid. I love him. We're going to add a new material. Again, same process. Not too tricky here, gang, right? Add material slot, new, and we're going to change this to mat_03. And lastly, I'm going to change this to blue. So we have 3 materials on here. They ain't doing nothing for us, right? Only the first material is what's all around our object here. So how we do this is we have to go into edit mode. Some of you, I'm sure, experienced that when you guys were making your donut yesterday. If, again, this is completely new to you, you can enter edit mode in 2 ways. You can hit tab. Again, hotkey master here. I love hitting tab. Just has some kind of like, it's like hitting enter on the register. Just makes you feel powerful. I'm in edit mode. Anything's possible. I can move this corner and push it out here. Or if you kind of, again, like clicking a bunch of times, you can go to the very top left here. You're in object mode by default. Just click that little drop down and you'll go in edit mode. Very important when you go in edit mode, make sure you have an object selected. If you go into edit mode without an object selected, you ain't going to be editing much. And what we're going to do is we're actually not going to use the vertices selection, which is maybe what you guys all used yesterday. We're going to change the selection modality to faces. Again, a cool shortcut is Control or Command 3. But again, just in case you all don't have that, just hit it up here up on the top left. See these little boxes here? I really wish I can zoom in, gang. I'm so sorry. The only thing I could do that's like awkwardly like zooming in is I use the snipping tool and I do new. And I just kind of like select my little area there. And there it is, gang. That right there, that little box, that's where I can't even zoom in on snipping. Man, this is horrible. But anyways, I'm sure you all got it. Face select tool. To test it out, just select some faces. Just left click a couple times. If you're selecting faces, you're looking good. Vertices selection's A-okay for this. Just face selection makes it a little bit easier. So now with the face selection tool, just select a random face. It doesn't matter. The right, the left, don't matter. I'm going to go with the right. And I'm going to go to material 2 by selecting that here in the materials panel. And I'm going to hit this button called assign. Assign active material slot to selection. You click on it. Boom. It added a new material to our object. And that's kind of like how you add different materials to a single object. There's ways, of course, you could paint on your object using the texture paint feature of Blender. Maybe if some of you are into like painting models, like through Substance Painter, but you want to get like a low level entry, Blender is great for that. But when you're kind of dealing again with vertices and edges and stuff like that and doing this kind of traditional form of modeling, faces is how you're going to basically add materials to multiple objects. Do the same thing to material 3. Select a random face, material 3, hit assign. I only did it for one face each, but of course you could like rotate around your cube. You can kind of make like a little symmetric kind of color here, okay? So try that out on your ends. Try adding those materials by hitting assign when you have them selected and the corresponding face. Very important. And if you accidentally, change a material, a face to a different material that you didn't want to, okay. Just go back there and, change it. And you don't have to have your object looking like mine. It could be whatever it looks like. Okay. We've done a little bit here. So I'm going to hit Command S, Control S, and I'm going to save. Now let's go back into the shader tab, because again, I just really like that environment to really see like the importance of this object. And also just to see how it looks like, when we're adding, different effects to it. So I'm going to go in the shading tab, bring us back over here. And now you can see every time when I'm selecting my materials in the properties tab, it shows a different material in the nodes. So very important, once you kind of get lost in the sauce or lost in the nodes, it's very important to make sure you're editing the right node. Make sure you got mat 03 here if you're editing that material, and so on and so on. And that's why I always stress that naming conventions are really important. Maybe you're making like a glass material, watermelon material, you always want to be naming your materials. Mat 123 is okay for now, but down the road, if you're doing grass or something like that, probably name it grass. It's going to help you out down the road. So what we're going to do here is just like before, let's just play with some of these sliders. Let's just have some fun with it. There's no rhyme or wrong. So I'm going to select my first material, which is the top right here. And I'm going to bring the roughness all the way to the right. I'm going to bring specular down a little bit. You can see it's very subtle, and you can, again, in Blender, move these windows however you want. All you have to do is put your cursor right there in the middle parts and drag it on down. That's all you got to do. You can make whatever layout you want with Blender. How nice are they, right? It lets you make your house however you want. You can see specular adds like a little bit of a shine and stuff like that to the color. And I think that's all I want to kind of do with material 1 is make the roughness go all the way to the right. I don't want to mess with really anything else here. What's a kind of fun one I guess I'll look into for the first one actually is emissions. Emissions pretty cool. It adds light to your object. So you can just click on emissions. It's black by default. Turn it up bright, and you can see my pink material starting to kind of glow and stuff like that. To make it glow even brighter, we can bring the emission strength even higher. Now, the thing is, there's really like no kind of like glowing aura or something like that. You would probably have to play a little bit with the render settings and stuff like that to get that glow. I'm not going to worry too much about this tutorial because, like I said, that could get a little bit too deep than we need to go. And then the next thing that we're going to do here is just by selecting the material, the blue one, we're going to basically just add it really metallic and really shiny by bringing that roughness down. So already here, you can do whatever you really want with the green one too. There's really no rhyme and reason. I just like kind of showcasing us to show you that, again, you can have multiple materials. And again, each material can have its own individual property. So again, this just opens up the opportunities for, wow, you can kind of like color your objects. You can use images for this as well, which we'll go into here momentarily, which we're going to probably, I guess, honestly, kind of segue right into that now. I think that'll be a good time. So before we kind of maybe do that, let's kind of add like some kind of object to add this image texture on. Let's add a table for our donut. So to do that, and I guess, if there is any questions too, I haven't really been looking at chat, but if there is any questions about so far what we've covered, let me know. I'm always happy to answer them. I'm sure at the end of the workshop, I'll be open for any Q&As, but you can always put them in the chat as well. I'm going to go back into the layout tab. And I am just going to hide this cube because even though the cube is great, he did a great purpose. Thank you, Mr. Cube. But I'm just going to hide him here. We'll keep him for later. We're just going to hide him. We're going to add a new object. And again, when you're adding these new objects, You can see almost I was about to do it. We're in edit mode still. Make sure you go back in object mode. Always make sure when you're adding new objects, you're in object mode. You can in edit mode, but it's going to add that object mesh to that previous object. So you want to make sure to not kind of run into that craziness. So with an image texture, you guys are going to have to download something a little bit extra, which I'll provide the links and everything like that. And I'll even maybe try to like throw it in the chat to help you all out, but try this out on your own. It's not too tricky. But the first thing what we're going to do is, again, in object mode, back in our layout view, we're going to hit Shift A, and let's just add, what do you guess? A cube. We're going to add a cube because we're going to make this basically like a flat table. Some of you maybe have learned some of the techniques of transforming your object from yesterday's workshop. In case, again, this is the first time using Blender, how you can do that easily is just by selecting your object, hitting S. S is the shortcut for scale, and hit Z to only scale on the Z axis. Now, when I'm bringing my cursor in and out, I'm able to make it skinny or short, okay? So I'm gonna make my box a little bit skinny, kind of like a table. And I'm gonna just hit undo to do that one more time. We have it selected, hit S, hit Z, hit Z to only scale up on X and Y, or only, scale on the Z axes. We wanna make this a little bit bigger, but again, I don't want it to be chunky. So if you hit again S for scale, and I want to say it's Shift Z, it does everything but the Z axis. So now I'm able to drag away and kind of have my mouse, you know how it's kind of wrapping around my screen right here, right? And we can kind of make that a little bit bigger. This is going to be our table here. Your table can look however it wants to. You know, it doesn't have to be just like this. It could be whatever you want. And honestly, a plane maybe even would have been better, to be honest. But we'll rock and roll with the cube. Cube is fine. Cube is life. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to basically grab some images to make an image texture. So I don't know how you've all ever grabbed image textures. Maybe there's some Blizzard or Blender, gurus in the class. Maybe some reason, during your life you had to texture something, and maybe you're looking up like wood, table, texture, which you will get some results. You will get some results doing this. But what's going to happen more or less is the materials are not going to tile well. You're going to be able to see when that image ends and when another one begins. So this may work, and there are tricks to do this in Photoshop to make it tiling. But like I said, that's too much there. So I'm going to show you all a really awesome resource that I use a lot of times. There's plenty of websites that do this. But one of my favorite is texturehaven.com. I'm going to throw that in the chat, because this is just a great resource. Again, if you're into 3D modeling, I recommend you save this somewhere. I'll maybe share with the club like this master resource that I have, like 10, 15 links of like textures and models you can grab from the web. But this is a really cool one, and they're all completely free. Another one that you maybe have seen ads about, or maybe like you follow Blender Guru on YouTube, Polygon is also a great website as well. You can also look up textures here. What's kind of a drag, though, with Polygon is you have to make an account, and I think it's credit-based. So not everything is free on Polygon, as you can see right here. Like, here's one that's free, and look at all these ones that are not free. But it's good to, again, just have multiple resources, to go to. And there's plenty more out there on the web. Some people's lives just make textures. How crazy that is. So I'm going to go to Texture Haven, and I'm going to look for an image texture set. I'm going to go for wood. And again, I'll try to add this, to the chat, but just to make this easy on me, go on your own and grab a material. Any material is fine. You can make your table out of fabric, make it out of metal, do whatever you want. Be crazy, be inventive, but for me, I'm just going to keep things simple. I'm going to go with wood because, again, I have a wooden table my donut's going to sit on. And honestly, none of these really look like a wooden table, except for that first one called plywood. And honestly, plywood isn't really like what you'd use for a table, but hey, we'll stick with what we got. So I'm going to click on this plywood object. And just to make sure, again, if you want to follow along with Tyler, there's the plywood texture there. And what we're going to do is we're going to download all maps. So here's something that's pretty important here when you're downloading textures. If you're doing this, again, for like a video game, like a game asset, It's probably good to have a little bit more smaller file sizes. I know some of you might be like 8K, 8K, PNG, or, but look at that. That's 268 megabytes, man. That's a lot of file. That's a lot of, memory just for a texture. So when you're making games and you're making like other virtual environments and stuff like that, I would recommend you to always go the lowest version. So we're going to go 1K JPEG just because it's the lowest version, going to be most optimized for any usage. B, just because the download speed should be pretty quick. We're in a live demo here, right? And I didn't really prepare all this, so professionally. So just download this all maps 1K JPEG, which is 1.8 megabytes. I mean, even if you're at McDonald's, you should be able to download this guy. And then what you're going to do is once you have that downloaded, as I'm just going to minimize my Blender file here, you're all going to awkwardly see my messy desktop. I try the best I can. I keep it on the outskirts. And you're just going to drag this file to your desktop for now. I recommend you down the road to make like a, like a database locally, like in your file. Maybe call this like Blender textures or something like that. And then you categorize them by like wood, grass, nature, whatever. I highly recommend you down the road to start like collecting these textures because you may want to use them, years in the future, right? I've been doing that for about 2 or 3 years. So I have quite a lot of textures that I need to start categorizing them because it's pretty crazy looking through the names. But I'm just going to call this, Blender textures. Nothing too fancy. And I'm just going to open it up. I'm going to bring my zip drive in here. I know there's some people with Macs. There's some people with Windows. If you're a Windows user, I think 7-zip is built in. I may be wrong, but you want to extract this to this folder. If that method of extracting is a little bit too weird, Mac users out there, you might be like, oh, what's going on here? Just double click your zip folder. Better yet, I'm actually going to pull my zip folder back out, double click it, open it up, and just do the good old click and drag. You can do that. Just whatever you do, whatever way you can do to get those files out of the zip file, get it into a folder. Okay. And again, like I said, I'll make sure to share all this stuff after the workshop. Don't worry, the image stuff is going to be pretty simple. I'm looking at the time. I want to make sure we get into some kind of fun node-based networks. Maybe we'll bleed into like 805, but like I said, I don't want to keep anyone here too late if they don't have to. So now we have a folder right here that's for our materials. Okay. I'm looking at some folks here. Yeah. WinRAR or whatever like that is the real true hero here. But hopefully you're all able to get this into your own, into your subfolder here. Okay. All right. I'm going to bring back Blender. Boop. And now that we have the Blender file open, same thing as before. We're going to add a new material. But this time, let's actually go to the shading tab because it's just going to make things just, again, a little bit easier. I just love how Blender has all these preset layouts just so I don't have to keep messing with my viewport from the beginning. Totally okay. I honestly do that, but I like going to the shading thing because it has it all there. So again, shading tab. We're back in Blender. Let's rock and roll. So now that we have the table basically set, we're going to do the same thing as before. Properties panel, make sure we have the material selected, and we're going to hit new. And we're going to call this new material. What are we going to call it, gang? We're going to call it table. Table material for our table object, which again is a cube. So I'm also going to name my cube object table. Don't sweat about that. You ain't got to name it all the time, but I like to be a little bit organized myself. So now that we have the table, let's add the image texture. So of course, by default, if we wanted to make this look like a table, maybe we would again, do the same thing as we did with the donut, try to make it like a brown, which brown really never really comes out that well, as best as we can, right? It's almost like the color crayon drama, right? So what we're going to do instead of using the base color is we're going to add an image texture node. So we're getting, a little bit deep here. This is the deep dive portion, I guess, of the workshop, right? So you're going to go into your shader editor, and this is what it's called right here. This is the shader editor viewport. This is where all of your materials and how you'll edit them, in complex, node systems. And I love it because it's nodes. Nodes are groovy, man. If you can code in nodes, and then that's the best thing. Node systems can be really a good skill set for your resumes and all that jazz. But we're going to add a new node. And just like how we add in new objects by hitting Shift A, when we're in the shader editor, again, I'm kind of weird and I just double click or click once just to make sure like Blender, I'm in the shader editor mode, right? We're going to hit Shift A. And when you hit Shift A, it's going to have all these options from input, output, shader, texture, color, vector, blah, 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 blah. You know, you can memorize where all this is. I'm not one of those people. I just use the search bar, and I'm just going to type in image. There it is, image texture. I'm going to hit enter, and there's my image texture there. And I'm going to do it one more time just to be safe. I'm going to delete this by just selecting it and hitting X, just like before. Shift A in the shader editor. Click on the search bar because that's just going to make things easy. And in the search, we're just going to put IMAGE, image. Image texture pops up. Hit enter. We've added the image texture node. Thumbs up. Not too hard, right? That's what we love about Blender. It ain't too hard. So now, you know, we have this all set up, but we still don't have the image texture in there. So what we're going to do is hit open. And now, of course, this is where organization matters. I have a folder called Doge. What's in that? Who knows? But we're going to find that Blender folder that we just made. And luckily, alphabetically, mine's right on the top. I'm going to hit that. And there's a couple of files that Texture Haven gave us. They gave us a normal map, a roughness map, an ambient occlusion map. Maybe some of you digital illustrators out there kind of know what that term means. Basically, it's just kind of like the reflections of shadows and how real life works. Real life is crazy. You know, we can do the best we can to model it. And the diffuse shader or the diffuse map, that's the main one you want to look for, diffuse. Sometimes they'll call it color, COL. Basically, anything that looks like whatchamacallit, like the actual color of the object, that's the main one you want to look at. And some of your viewports, when you looked in this file directory, may not look like mine. It's because I have a different view. Up in this little top right here, you can have like, you know, display mode be a vertical list. You can make it like, I don't know what this is, horizontal list. That's weird. Or a preview, you know, kind of list. And I like this for textures because you see the textures, you see the images. We're looking at images. It's good to see them, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to select this diffuse shader here. Or not shader, sorry, image. So now that you've done this, you should have your image texture, have the name of the file there, plywood diffuse underscore 1K. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do the holy matrimony here, and we're going to link the color to the base color. Crazy, right? I'll do that again just in case. Color, base color. And again, how node systems work, I'm going pretty quickly here, right? But nodes always have like an output, an input, they're color coding there to kind of help you. Yellow goes to yellow, but that's not always the case. But like I said, nodes are crazy. If you dealt with them, you kind of know what they're all about. But yeah, now we have our table textured up here. There's kind of like a step that I kind of am not going to cover, and that's UV unwrapping. Oh, geez, like I said, there's like so many rabbit holes you can get into. But just to be safe here, to just show you an example of unwrapping, go into our viewport mode, select the table, go into edit mode by hitting tab, make sure everything's selected, like hit A, or make sure just all your faces, edges, vertices, whatever mode you're on selected on is all selected. And you hit U. U as in unwrap, as in UV. U as in, there's not too many words I can think of with U. U. That starts with Y though. But yeah, if you hit U, again, edit mode, hit A to just select everything, hit U, it has unwrap options for us. You can do unwrap, which is kind of like just a basic unwrapping. Smart UV project is like Blender trying to be like some kind of fancy AI and unwrap it nicely. Honestly, it's a cube. Both options are going to give you similar results. I'm just going to hit Smart UV project because I think that's just kind of the best one you should use. And then I'm just going to hit A-OK. And now we basically have unwrapped our object. And when you do this, sometimes it will change your texturing a bit. You know, and like I said, the unwrapping thing is not really needed. I just kind of wanted to go in a little aside on that. Unwrapping is another deep dive that would need its own lecture itself. So yeah, so far we've made a table. Good job. You got an image on it. The table looks all right though. You know, there's a lot that could be asked for. And of course we grabbed the 1K version. So it's pretty mucky. Try this again with the 8K or the 4K versions next time on your own and see if you can mimic this stuff and you'll get some really nice results. But we're not done yet. There's a lot we can still add to this material to make our wood look more woody, I should say. So how we can do that is let's add a couple more image textures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my viewport so like I get a little bit of like a sheen or a shine on my material. And I'm going to pull up my shader editor up here pretty high. You know, I want to get a good, you know, visual here since I'm showing you all about it. But on your ends too, you want to make sure you can see things clearly. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing before. We're going to add a couple of image textures. And why we're doing this is because we're going to add one for the normals. We're going to add one for the roughness. And sorry, boys and gals, we're not going to do one for ambient occlusion. Blender doesn't care about that ambient occlusion. So any tutorials, anyone that tells you otherwise, they ain't right. Ambient occlusion and Blender don't mix for some odd reason. It's kind of weird. It was weird looking that up on the documentation, tell you the truth, but I guess that's how the cookie crumbles or the donut crumbles. So we're going to add a couple more image textures. So just on your own or follow along with me, just go in there, Shift A, search, IMG, you know, image texture. Boom, there's one. And I'm going to add another one. Boom, there's two. Just add two other ones. Okay, give you all just a moment there because I know I can do it fast, but you know, I want you all to follow along. It's always good to follow along in class. I know sometimes you can always look at the recordings and stuff like that to catch up, but honestly, to do it in person can really help out. And like I said, I'll be around here. We're getting up to the 1 hour point here. So we're going to wrap this image texture up and we'll maybe have like an extra credit, you know, kind of fun node-based thing for people who want to stay a little bit after night. So what we're going to do just to speed round this is we're going to use these other image textures and we're going to open them up and we're going to add, guess what? The other image maps that we have. So with the first one here, open, Blender textures, and we're going to grab the roughness. Rough. So there's the rough there. And we're going to go on the bottom one. And just to get it out of the way, we're going to open it up and we're going to do the normals. Basically this little pink guy right here. Purple. Blue? Can't tell. Okay. So now we have our roughness and we have our normals on these additional nodes. And don't worry if you're still opening and finding your image files, you know, do it when you can, no rush. Because there's a couple of things that we're going to fix here real fast. And we can, of course, plug these in right away and they may work. But honestly, what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to change the color space to non-color. And the reason why is because this data in these image maps are not related to color, right? They're not related to like, you know, like above, like with the color of wood. It's more so roughness is going to like be the data of like the shininess, and the normal map's going to be kind of like this illusion of depth and further geometry, which we don't have, but it's going to be really nice and just, again, simplify our geometry of our model by giving the illusion of three-dimensionality, which is pretty groovy. The 1K texture, like I said, is not going to do it amazingly, but trust me, if you do the 4K or the 8K, you're going to see some stellar results just with some wood. How funny is that? Same thing with the normal. Change that to non-color. And again, zooming in here, color space is what I'm doing this to, okay? All right. So with the roughness, if this was a class, where would I plug the roughness in, gang? We're going to plug it into the roughness slider. So what you do is you grab the output of the color, because again, even though we're using this color output, it's not color data, but we're still going to use this because this is where it's all funneling. We wouldn't want alpha. That'd be weird. And you're going to drag this right to the roughness port right there. And what this should do is it should update the roughness accordingly to what this wood material is. And honestly, this is pretty much like how wood is, like a 2x4. It's plywood, right? We got a plywood texture. Plywood ain't shiny, right? Plywood's pretty matte. So that's kind of like what we have going on here. Maybe I should have picked a different material, but I'd rather you all experiment on yourselves. Maybe some of you did grab different materials. Who knows? Now with the normal, you might be like, I understand this now. It all makes sense. I'm going to grab this and throw it in the normal. Well, you're kind of right. And you actually see some weird, interesting results with our wood. It kind of got like shiny. It's kind of interesting, you know, but honestly, there's another node that you need to add here. And how you decouple nodes or the lines, I forgot what these were called. Sockets or the things you put them into. Cords? Whatever. How to get rid of the cord is you can just go to its output, click and drag it off, and you can get rid of it. Alternatively, you can hit, what is it? Alt? No, Control. Control or Command, right click. That's how you can knife. And you can really cut that sucker up and get rid of that. We need to actually add another node in between this. And what that is the normal mode, or the normal node, I should say. So I went that pretty quick, but you're going to hit Shift A, search bar is our best friend, NODE, which I don't know why I typed in node. That's not what I wanted. I wanted normal. My bad. So we're going to do normal. And there's two normals you see there, normal map and normal. They have their both differences. I honestly always get kind of like forgetful which one I want. The normal one with these two orbs is something that you don't want for this example. Okay. So if you ever see these two orbs, I don't even know what those are for, tell you the truth. So we're just going to use normal map. Okay. Normal map, yellow to yellow. Let's keep it mellow, purple to purple. Slurple. Okay, there you go. Now that we have our normal on there, you can still see that not too much has happened here, Tyler. You told me like some 3D depth was going to happen here. And the reason why is because we need to bump the strength up a little bit. So if you bump this to like 2, now you can see there's a little bit of definition, right? You can kind of see the grains of the wood kind of pop up, right? And if I bring this to maybe like a 5, now you can really kind of see those grooves a little bit better. And now when I zoom out, I mean, that looks like a pretty nice texture. Agreed with you. It's 1K resolution. That's pretty crummy. So if you would have done this with the 4K or any other material, you're going to get some stellar results. And that's why I encourage you all after this workshop or on your own time is download some of these other, textures. What would tree bark look like? What would moss wood look like? What about some of these rock textures? Honestly, I normally do this texture with rocks because they're just a lot cooler and they have a lot more definition and stuff like that. So I'm getting a little bit of regret, but hey, we live life with no regrets. So this is all groovy, but before this workshop ends at 8, because again, I know some of you got to go, I'm going to do another little special after dark thing if, we allow it. I think I've been given the A-OK, but let's say, for example, you know what, Tyler, I ain't got the time, man. I ain't got the time to add an image texture normal. I'm on a crunch. I need to get this done like this. So there's actually a cool add-on that you can use in Blender. And spoiler, add-ons are kind of like the bread and butter for any kind of modeler out there to make trees, to make maybe more artificial objects. Long story short, do not be afraid to use add-ons in your projects. It's always great to model things from scratch and be like a master sculptor. But honestly, it's 2021, man. No one's going to be a master nowadays. We're all competing with each other. So you just got to be the quickest and the speediest done, and then get paid for like 10 hours when you only worked for 1. So what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to do okay, I'm going to save first. I'm going to add a new material to my table just because I don't want to wig people out. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our materials up on the top right and hit X to unlink that table. Okay. The reason why I'm doing this is because I want you to keep that material. There's going to be a fancy way we do that same process over again. And this is maybe when you can sit back and watch and, don't worry about really following along if it's a little bit too fast and you just want to hang tight. But I'm going to make a new material by, again, hitting the X. And we're going to just make a new material called table 2. Okay. And again, there ain't nothing on this guy. It's just basic default shader. So there's this add-on. If you never fiddle with add-ons, which again, some of you are, I'm sure, are strictly beginners. So like add-on, what? So add-ons. So yeah, add-ons are great. They can actually change up your capabilities with Blender. We're going to add one add-on here tonight. You go to edits up on your file options up here and go to preferences. Spoiler, if you guys don't have like a 3-button mouse, maybe like, navigation's really tricky, maybe you don't have like cool hotkeys, you can actually emulate a numpad, which is really great. As it says in parentheses, it's useful for laptops. Emulate a 3-button mouse. Maybe you're a touchpad warrior out there for some crazy reason and you never want to buy a 3-button mouse. I'm talking to you people out there. Get a 3-button mouse. It's going to make things a lot easier in life. So get that. But if you're just, like I said, a touchpad warrior, these little options right here will be really helpful. I'm not going to cover them because, that's not what I was getting paid for tonight. I'm just kidding. We're getting paid. So you go to add-ons. Go to the add-ons here in the preferences, and you're going to search an add-on called Node Wrangler, brought to you by Wrangler Jeans. So yeah, go to add-ons and look up Node. And this little box right here ain't going to be checked for you. Check the box. Trust me, check the box. So check the box, and there's really no installation that's required. It just adds the capability to Blender. So now that you have the Node Wrangler, you know that process we did to add all those images? Now all we have to do is select the principal BSDF shader. Oh, Jesus Christ. What was that hotkey? I think I saved it over here. I don't have it saved here. Oh, God. Okay, let's see here, Tyler. Shift Control T. I'm going to try it first before. Shift Control T. Ah, okay. Whew. Thank gosh, Tyler. So anyways, you have the Node Wrangler add-on installed. If you don't have this installed, this hotkey shortcut ain't going to work for you. But if you have it installed, if you followed along with me, preferences, add-ons, and look for Node and then checkbox the Node Wrangler, all you need to do this kind of crazy like image setup is you just need to hit the principal BSDF shader once, have it selected, hold Shift Control T, Shift Control T. Mac users, Shift Command T. Pretty sure it works for Mac the same way as it would work for Windows, but you're going to open up this new window here. And just to make sure you have the right thing open, make sure it has principal texture setup in this little blue button here. If you see that, thumbs up, you're looking good. I'm going to go to that Blender texture file that I had before, highlight the whole sucker, highlight all the images I have, even this ambient occlusion because it ain't going to use it. I think it might actually use it, but it ain't going to do nothing. Have them all selected and hit principal texture setup, and boom, it adds them all in once. And you can see the ambient occlusion is not added. It adds this little mapping thing. This is really nice because you can actually use this slider to kind of tile your wood a little bit better. Maybe you want like the wood to be a little bit smaller. You know, maybe you scale it down, maybe you scale it up. You know, it's nice. You know, it's nice to have these nodes in there, but they're not required as you saw earlier. So yeah, that's kind of it with image textures and the basic shader texture materials in Blender. I'm happy to go into like a little bit of extra credit mode, but I guess I just wanted to leave this as just a quick minute here to take a breather. You've done a lot. Save. Command S, Control S, save your project. You did a great job. But is there any kind of questions or comments before I jump into, let's say, the after credit, extra credit kind of stuff, and also Cadre members, if there's any announcements you want to share or something like that, let me know. And I'm going to look at chat here just to make sure I'm not missing any questions, but I think everyone is doing all right. Okay. So Cadre, is it a-okay if I move forward? Oh yeah. What are normals? Normals. So I saw someone in the chat bring them up, bump maps. That's kind of like what they are. I think they are one of the same. Honestly, I ain't a encyclopedia. I'm just an artist that know what things do. But think of it like kind of like a depth map. It kind of gives like the illusion of mapping. And what's really cool is like, let's say you have like, I don't know, some kind of texture that you find, you know, maybe you're one of those folks out there that did it this way, right? Like wood table texture, right? And maybe you grab this and maybe you made it like into a tile texture. Maybe your job is to make textures out there in the world. Who knows? Maybe you draw a texture, right? Maybe some of your illustrators out there and you want to get a hand painted wood texture, right? How would you make a normal for that? Well, what's actually really cool is this website right here, which I'll share in the chat, is Normal Map Online. This tool is really awesome because you can add any image to this and it's going to make a normal map for you. And you can actually see the preview of what that normal map is here right on the right-hand side here. So for example, here it is in the chat. Throw it to everyone. Pasta. There it is there. Hey, look at that. It's a GitHub URL. Somebody coded this, gang. Open source. YOLO. But anyways, what's really nice about this is, again, let's say I had just that image texture by itself. I'm just going to paste it on my desktop. You can just drag it and drop it into here. And you can see, look at that. It made a normal map for me. And there's the normal map right there. I can download it. I can make a displacement map, a specular map. Some really good stuff you could do here. And you could play with strength, level, blurriness, and all that other jazz. Then you download the normal map. And you got a normal map ready to go for Blender to give you, again, that illusion of 3D depth. And if you look at the one they gave us from Texture Haven, if it opens up 2 images for me, it's pretty similar. I think our custom one's going to have a little bit more depth to it, but like I said, that's when you kind of play with the sliders and kind of tone that down. Okay. So that was just a little bit of a cool resource side right there. So let's get into some weird shaders here. You know, I'm going to try to keep a deadline at 8:20 or 8:15. I don't really want to keep you all this late. Like I said, I'm sure we all like to relax on Thursday nights, but hopefully this is fun. Hopefully it's fun for you all and hopefully you're enjoying this. Okay. So we're going to add a new shader. And how should we do this? let's maybe put this on a new object, because I'm going to basically follow a YouTube tutorial to show you guys this, and I'll share you the YouTube tutorial here in the chat. So again, you can reference that on your own. So don't feel like this is like some wizardry Tyler came up with. This is all, again, open knowledge. You just got to find it. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep in the shader editor mode thing. Should we stay in this? Nah, we're actually going to leave it. We're going to go into layout. Let's go to layout, gang. And then, of course, this is when you can bring your donut. You can bring your donut. And look at that. Beautiful. Donut on table in plein air. Make it FTF or NFT. I don't know. Cryptocurrency, digital art. I'm not following the trends. Okay, but we're going to hide all this stuff here real quick. So don't get too excited there. Sorry about that. I got you probably a little bit too excited. I'm going to hide everything again. We're going to start from scratch, and we're going to hit Shift-A, and we're going to add a UV sphere. That's what we're going to play with today. So hide everything in your hierarchies, in your models. And again, anybody out there, cadres, officers, just shut me down if we're going a little bit too late. But like you said, it's okay if we go a little bit late. Cadre at night. Okay. So now that we have our UV sphere, and just in case, like I said, we got some beginners in the booth, Shift-A, mesh, UV sphere. Okay. I'm just going to add a UV sphere. And I'm going to right click on this guy in object mode to bring up a object context quick menu. And I'm going to hit shade smooth. You can see that you can kind of see like the polygons, right? You can see the edges of the circle. And maybe some of you, when you're in the workshop last night, looked at the subdivision surface modifier, which is awesome. Another way to kind of smooth your objects besides using that is just the right click and hit shade smooth. Does a pretty good job. You still see a little bit of the hard edges on the corners, but who's looking at those details? Am I right? Am I right? Okay. Sorry, I go a little cuckoo crazy when I'm just talking to myself. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to grab this timeline on the bottom, and we're going to grab this timeline and pull it up. Okay, so pull it up, gang. Rise up. So again, right down here, have this little, like, what is it? Up, down arrow, whatever. Vogue. Bring it on up. Over here on the left-hand side, this editor is a timeline editor, which is cool if you're doing animations. This ain't an animation workshop. Sorry, you animators out there. Go to a different workshop, not tonight. But we're going to go to the shader editor. So again, that's top left little window, which again is so hard to see. I'm so sorry. It's like a little clock on my end. Editor type. Click on it. Brings you a drop-down menu with all these options. Shader editor. It's under the general on the left-hand column. It's like the fourth or fifth, sixth item there. Shader editor. Okay. All right. And right now it should be blank because we don't have a material for it. Okay, so now what we're going to be doing is, what's cool is Steve brings up a good point, the displacement. So there's also a displacement node that can really add like physical geometry. I used to kind of know displacement pretty well back in the day when it was Blender 2.79. I don't know displacement nodes now, unfortunately. There's great tutorials out there. Normals and displacement are pretty close, but unless they've changed things in Blender 2.8 and above, displacement is another way to give you that illusion of geometry using a texture map. But like I said, I'm not well versed in that, so that's why I didn't cover it tonight. But it's really cool if you can figure it out, or if it's still even a thing. Normal maps do fine enough, especially if you're making game assets. It's always better to be low poly and low file size. So with the sphere selected, we're going to add a new material. And this material title, call it whatever you want. I'm going to call this crazy material because we're going to add some crazy stuff here. It's almost kind of like normals give like the illusion of depth, like a fake, but the displacement actually does some displacement of the mesh. But like I said, I'm no encyclopedia. Don't quote me. You can quote that from me. Don't quote me, by Tyler Sinnard. Okay, so what we're going to do first here is we're going to just zoom into our material. We have a crazy material rocking and rolling. So this is where Tyler's going to reference his notes, and we're just going to play with some nodes here. And we may go a little bit fast. Just try to follow along with the node system as best you can. I don't want to keep you already longer than I've already have. So again, appreciate everyone who stuck around. For those that headed on out tonight, sorry I didn't say goodbye formally. But like I said, I hope you're not burning yourselves out, gang. Blender is awesome, but take care of yourselves. The first object that we're going to add there is a color ramp node. So in the shader editor, and spoiler, we're going to be in the shader editor for a long time. We're going to add a new node called a color ramp node. So Shift A, search, because who needs to look up things when it's searchable, right? Type in color ramp, or just type in color. Color ramp's going to be the option you want, not vertex color, color ramp. And it looks like this. It's kind of like a little, how can I do this nicely to display my stuff? I guess like that, I guess. Actually, I kind of like doing this real quick. Keep whatever layout you have. I'm going to change my layout. Yeah, this looks cool. Shade editor. Yeah. Get rid of this. Okay. There we go. This is a little bit better. A little tidier. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to just attach this color ramp node to our principal BSDF shader in the base color. And again, make sure you're in material preview mode. You should be already, just in case you haven't. Another cool hotkey is Z or Z when you're in the viewport. It brings up this little quick radial menu where you can go into wireframe mode, groovy, futuristic, solid, which is bleh, it's gray, rendered, which is awesome, but we got rid of all the lights, so there is no light here. But let's go into material preview, because that's going to give you a preview of your material. And, right away, you're probably like, wait a minute here. I added this color ramp, and, you can zoom in on the color ramp and you can kind of change the gradient a little bit. And I'm sure some of you have used gradient tools in Photoshop and Illustrator, but what kind of gradient is this, man? This is not adding any gradient. It's just like almost adding like both the colors and making like a new color, a gray color, right? It's adding a little bit of black, a little bit of white. It's not really giving me the gradient that I wanted, especially with the tool that it's using, right? You need to add this other node called the texture coordinate node. Honestly, this node still eludes me like what the heck it is. I never really used it honestly too much until I kind of explored it more with nodes of the semester. So don't feel like in your Blender, journeys, you need to incorporate this, but it's kind of nice. And what you want to use is the top node, which is called generated. And you're going to grab the generated and bring it to the factual, FAC. We're going to bring that to the only input it will take. And now when I grab my slider and start moving this around, now we can start seeing that gradient take effect to our model. And of course, you can change the colors of these, and you can have, of course, add new or get rid of them, right? So I'm going to change this by clicking on this little arrow. See how it's black down here? I can click that. Brings up our friendly color wheel. Change to maybe like, I don't know, kind of like a light blue. Go here to the white. What's a good complementary color? Orange. There you go. So now we kind of have this like nice, like, I don't know, very soft, some of you maybe could even like make some cell shaded work here. I know we're all into Animu, right? So if you change this linear to like constant, that maybe will get you more of a cartoony look, but you can definitely see how you can kind of get that cell shaded kind of shadowy look right there, right? But there's also, there's better anime shaders, I'm sure, out there. But there's also these different points from ease. Cardinal does something weird, I think. Honestly, again, don't know these definitions. Look in the documentation. Blender is going to tell you all. I'm going to leave it on linear for now. So that's cool and all. Gradients, awesome sauce. Let's add another node to get a little bit fancy. So the next node that we're going to add is the noise texture. I'm sure you've always heard this in your classes, some way or another. Perlin noise, noise texture, white noise, pink noise. Maybe some of you have heard of those before. What is noise? Well, noise is, that's kind of it, I guess. It's self-defining. It's noise. It's static. To kind of visualize that is I'm going to unattach my color ramp node, and I'm going to add a new node, and guess what it's going to be called? The noise texture. You got it. We're going to get noisy. Noise texture. Click that right here. And now we have the noise texture added. And we're just going to slap the color right into the color and just see what the heck is going on. And son of a gun, it's noise. It's noisy. Are my headphones working? Is it making noise? I'm just kidding. Anyways, horrible jokes. So with the noise texture thing, it does what it says. It adds noise. It adds a little bit of static. It adds a little bit of disruption going on here. And you could play with the sliders from like scale, changes the different, size of the noise, detail. You can make it like very blurry, hazy, or very sharp. It's kind of hard to see still, no matter how much you bring that detail up, maybe to the triple digits. Roughness, this can make it very, again, granular, very kind of like, I don't know, gives me like a itchy feeling, or you can make it, again, very blurry. I'm trying to think of that fancy word, Gaussian blur. And the distortion's really rad because it makes things like liquidy. I love the distortion one. So when you see water shaders and stuff like that, that's how they're doing it. They're using the noise texture. Okay? Doesn't matter what values your sliders are on. Just we were kind of experimenting with there. Yeah, it looks like a skin rash. Yeah. So now what we're going to do is let's disconnect this guy, reconnect our color ramp. And what we're going to do is we're going to slide this noise texture right in. And what's really cool with nodes is you can kind of cut in line. You know, when they say no cuts, no butts, no coconuts. Well, guess what? The noise texture is all about coconuts. So you can bring it right in the middle of that texture coordinate and the color ramp, and it'll just slap it together. And look at that. We are combining like the color ramp and the noise texture to make some, again, interesting graphics. You're almost making like a planet, right? Like Jupiter. Yeah. So this is something like you can make like procedural, planets and stuff like that. So it's really cool. And again, playing with, again, the sliders even more, the detail, detail honestly leaves a lot to be determined, but I guess just when it gets to the decimal points, it actually does something. Roughness, again, blurry, and sharpness, and again, really weird watery stuff with the distortion. So that's kind of like just a quick preview of noise textures. There's also another texture that we can play with. It's called the and another kind of cool thing I guess I'll show you here is, again, play with everything. Go to the color ramp and change this to constant, and then you can get really like a cartoony kind of shader here. I got to kind of play with this a little bit more. But yeah, there you go. So we can get kind of like a cartoony, again, kind of look here, maybe like molten lava or something like that, again, depending on your colors. So again, it's pretty fun. Like I said, I enjoy this a lot. And again, you can even grab that color and bring that to emission. And then again, you can make that very bright and glowy as well. I'm going to detach that off the emissions though. So let's play with another texture. And this one's called, honestly, what is this called? The Voronoi. Oh my gosh. If any of you can correct me, please do. But we're gonna search it, Shift A. You guys should almost have that second nature by now. Hit the search, and Voronoi. We keep saying it enough, it'll Voronoi. Oh man, it sounds like a chant. The earth splits and Voronoi emerges, our Lord. So anyways, the Voronoi shader, again, is a pretty cool thing. And like always, let's plug it into our base color and just see what the heck is going on. We plug it into here and whoa, fancy. So again, similar to like the noise shader, it adds like some kind of interesting, like this is like a mosaic. This is the Euclidean distance one. You can change Euclidean to Manhattan, and Manhattan will be similar. Chevy Chev. My God, I got to look up these words. They're all very similar, but they actually change quite drastically when you start combining them, especially the Manhattan here, or the Minkowski. Man, my goodness, changes things pretty drastically. So let's add this to our color ramp setup that we have here, and let's see what the heck it does. So I'm gonna delink this, and the noise texture. What's that meme? It all started with texture and noise, but now all my homies mess with, whatever. Can't remember how it is. But just to make things a little bit easy on us, I'm just going to click the texture coordinate just so you have all these setups saved. I like doing this just so you have them saved for, future use. Select the texture coordinate by left clicking it, hold shift, click the color ramp, hit Control C or Command C, again, if you're on a Mac, and then Control V or Command V to paste. And we're just going to drag these copies down below. Again, all we did was select these nodes, copy and pasta. Not too crazy there, okay? I'm going to go back to linear also on my color ramp here out of constant. So now let's attach them all together. How did I attach them, Tyler? I attached it with distance. Interesting. Okay, whatever my notes say, it must be right. So we're just going to grab the Voronoi rather than a texture coordinate for now. We'll throw the generator in there, yellow swag, why not? And I guess I did distance. I guess so. That's what my notes say. I'm sure color would do also some interesting results. Throw it into the color. And right now I'm on Minkowski. So again, depending on what you're on, Euclidean, Manhattan, Chebyshev, or Minkowski, you're gonna have different results. But now you can see, again, you can start getting some very interesting, results here. The exponent thing kind of makes it very, rectangular. It's a very like star-like. The randomness, again, you can kind of play with that. You can move your color ramp shader a little bit up and down. Again, to kind of play with the different colors there. Scale, again, as I mentioned, we can go to different ones. Euclidean, again, same thing. Maybe play again with the scale. This is very like bubbly kind of texture it makes there. Probably got to move my color ramp slider a little bit over here to kind of give it a little bit of room. It's a very, again, kind of like organic like materials here. Maybe this would be good for like lizard skin or something like that, right? Chebyshev, very digital, very square. And like I said, I'm not going to be able to play with all these kind of settings and stuff like that. So I encourage you to play with it on your own, just see what can result with these experiments. Change it to constant, change it to different, settings from B-spline. What's B-spline? I don't know. Check it on yourself and maybe you'll lead a tutorial one day. Who knows? So the really like cool thing is when you can kind of start like combining these nodes together. So there's another like fun node that we're going to add here. And what this is called the mix RGB mode. So again, we're going to search it. And this is the last node we're going to cover. Thank the heavens, right? It's called the mix RGB, not mix shader. Don't get it twisted. Mix shader used to be the bread and butter with material setups in 2.79. Honestly, less and less people are using the mix shader. It's still used in some cases because it combines, images, materials together and like kind of merges them, X-fade, and stuff like that. But honestly, I've never really seen too many people use it. If they do, it's for like legacy shaders. But we only want to use the mix RGB, RG Bizzle. So with this one mix RGB right here, what's really cool about this is we can do this in multiple ways. Oh, the other thing with the Voronoi texture that's really cool, and I think this works for the noise too, is you can change this texture coordinate from generate to UV. And that will give it different mapping as well. So again, like I said, a lot of things that you can kind of play here and experiment with like the different ways to kind of, create these textures. Take a photogrammetry model and add some crazy material on it and boom, you got a fine art piece. That's Tyler's tricks there for you. So what we're going to do here with the mix RGB is we're actually going to grab these two node networks that we have and we're going to combine them together. So actually, I'm going to just have the mix RGB slap itself in the middle. Remember how if you got a chord already, you could just slap it on in. Of course, it kind of kills my OCD here. It went to color 1. I wanted to be on color 2. So I'll put it on color 2. Grab my color ramp from earlier. Maybe change my colors a bit here. We're almost like Spartan colors by the end of the day. I'm going to go purple and green for this one. And yeah, now you're seeing here, we're getting some trippy effects here. And you can play with this factual slater to kind of play with that. Like I said, you can play with your other shaders. So again, you can see how it's basically has like two opacities, right? Two different shaders on top of each other. So pretty cool. Again, mix RGB can be used in a lot of ways. Another way to use this node setup is to, oh yeah, you know what is so cool? Steve brings up a good point. I'll show you a cool thing. You can animate materials too. And that's what I love about Blender. You can animate anything. So last thing to wrap things up here. Also what's really cool is like, we can make things like metal, like that's really cool. We're going to add 2 more nodes, or 1 more node after this. I lied. And then we're going to wrap things up. Looks like I went a little bit late. 8:30 is really when Tyler's cutting off because I'm getting burnt out. So what we're going to do now is with this mix RGB, system, you can keep it all separate, keep this to the side if you want to. I'm just going to select it all, Control C, Control V, and I'm going to make a whole copy of this node network. So I know I'm going a little bit fast here. I'm trying to speed things up in this tutorial, and such like that. I know the video resources will be really great because you can go off your own pace. But like I mentioned to you all, there's a YouTube video that covers all these nodes that we're doing right now. So, even though we're doing it at the Tyler mode, you can definitely check this out on your own time, and it's really rad. So what we're going to do here with this last kind of node setup network here is we're going to get rid of one of these texture coordinates. So I'm going to get rid of this bottom one, select it, left click it, X, it's gone. It's Thanos snap. It's out of here. There's only one texture coordinate now. And we're going to grab the UV and we're going to slap that into the vector. And what we're actually going to do now is rather than have this mixed RGB at the end, instead what we're going to do is we're going to have this mixed RGB in the middle. Kind of weird, right? So I'm going to just delink these chords. I'm going to slide over my color ramps a bit. I'm also going to just delink these color chords. And I'm going to put the RGB, mix RGB right here. And I'm going to grab distance, put it in color 1. And we're going to grab color and we're going to put it into color 2. So now what we're doing here is we're mixing noise and Voronoi together. You know, we're making like a goulash here. You know, you got like 2 sets of leftovers, you're throwing it in a pan and you're saying, forget it, let's just see what the heck happens. So now when we plug these into our color ramps, both of them will plug them into, right? Now we can grab whichever color ramp we want to. And again, feel free to move your, node networks around. Totally fine. You know, that's what's really great about it. You can move it however you want. Now we can grab these colors and slap them in the color. And we should be able to get some really trippy results here. Again, combining the noise texture with the Voronoi shader. So again, you can get some really interesting results here. Very organic, very alien kind of mixes going on here. And again, same as before, you can take it from the UV. Pretty sure generate should be totally fine. And yeah, again, you just get some really interesting kind of results when you start mixing and matching these shaders. And of course, playing with the color ramp. I'm going to use the other color ramp that I have here above just to show it as another example. So yeah, so you can make some really trippy stuff at the end of the day, something very noisy, very not. So with that being said, yeah, a hot towel, that would be nice actually on the back of my neck. So with that being said, there's one last node, gang. And then we're going to wrap it up. And what that is that really the node network? Hopefully my notes are right. But we're going to add another color ramp. So just add another color ramp. And we want it to be black and white, okay? And we're going to add another, another node. And guess what this node's called? This will just probably just, mess with your heads a bit, is a bump node. What's the bump node going to do, gang? Is it going to add a normal? Is it going to add displacement? I don't know. But anyways, we could take this color information from the color ramp, slap it into the height, slap this normal into our normal. And what this is going to do is maybe not this one. That's probably not a good example. Let's maybe, let's use the last one that we have. So now what this should be doing is creating depth to our shape again. And I think just my colors are just a little bit too crazy for my eyes here. I'm going to try to soften these colors just a bit. Yeah, because that was a little bit too cuckoo crazy for me. I never really liked Manhattan. I like Euclidean a little bit better. Okay. Pretty sure this is how we do this. Strength 1. This is how we do this, Tyler. Think, Tyler, think. Maybe this isn't how you add this node. I think there has to be something else that goes into it. Say la vie. This one, I'm not going to cover that well for you all. It's supposed to, add a little bit. Let's see, does distance do anything? No. It basically just adds, again, like we did before, a little bit of 3D depth. It does a little bit more visual than what I'm seeing here. So I think I'm doing something wrong and I'm too lazy to look at the video and pan through it. I don't want to take up any more people's time. So yeah, with that being said, basically you've kind of learned how to make some fancy textures. And again, using this kind of setup with noise, color ramps, you should in theory be able to make any texture you would ever want to. But at the end of the day, how you ever going to beat an image texture, right? So that's why we went over image textures, the basic principle BSTF shader, and we went into additional nodes. Spoiler, keep this as the mental notes. Color ramp, mix, noise, all these things will not transfer out as a GLB. If I export this now as a GLB file, it's going to be blank. And the reason why is just because GLB can't handle that noise. It literally can't handle that noise. It just provides, it's going to give me I'm sure a gray sphere. So yeah, you need to bake the texture, but baking's a whole other thing. Like I said, I can't keep you all here all night. I would if I could, I guess, but yeah. So that being said, that's basically it. Woohoo! Round of applause. We can come alive. Yeah. And yeah, so I guess this is the time, thank you all for sticking with it. Sorry to keep you all a little bit late. This is probably more than you ever needed, but it's really fun stuff. And again, as I mentioned, I am no wizard. I'm not hiding the secrets from you all. This video right here, top 6 Blender nodes to make any material. This guy right here, CG Cookie, is the YouTube tutorial site. If you want to like check this out on your own, please do. Always keep learning. You never stop. Look at this 2-hour video of procedural nodes. Maybe not. That's a whole other class, and that's too much there. So with that being said, I'm happy to answer any questions, comments, curiosities from the choir, or cadre officers. If you just want to kind of book in this, let's book in this sucker and just debrief and have a good time.
1, 2, 3.
That's my glass breaks out here. No, I'm just playing.
There's always a mic and mute delay with this.
I haven't heard of one clap in a long time. That was good.
Thank you so much. This was very in-depth and very informative, and I think you went over a lot of very important things and like different ways to do things, which I think was really helpful.
Yeah. Oh, and last little Tyler tip here. I know you're going to probably throw these files in like some other subfolder and get them off your desktop. Spoiler, if you ever move like your project file or image textures like out of sync, Blender is like going to try to follow that directory and be like, wait, where's that texture? A kind of good trick is to go to File, External Data, Pack all into .blend. It packed 6 files. It packed basically those image files we did before. So that's really good. It makes your Blender file a little bit bigger, but it'll save you time down the road. And especially when you're passing files back and forth, you won't just get pink textures and be like, where's my image texture? So anyways, last tip right there. Sorry about that, but I just reminded that.
Yep, that's very important. Thank you.